have with us here today Charles Paul Palm, author of The Remembering of Livingstone. She was born in Massachusetts. He has degrees from Emerson College and pursued his further studies in Georgetown University, the University of Michigan, and the University of Edinburgh. Charles' book has been widely acclaimed for the way that it presented the harrowing experiences of Cornelius Collins, leaving Ireland as a young man during the potato famine and coming to Milford, as well as Giuseppe Ambrosini, leaving northern Italy to start a new life, and eventually arriving here in Milford town, where he found work in the quarries. The book is now rated among the top 100 books. Charles researched the facts and events of the town for years. Unlike a history book, it follows the lives of Cornelius and Giuseppe and gives us an inside view of what it was like to be an immigrant coming to America, especially Milford town. St. Mary's Parish, the boot and shoe factories, and our most famous Milford Hinterland are of interest. But it is the personal lives of these two men that make the book so special. The book was inspired by family journals. It's emotional, factual, and educational. It is indeed an honor to be welcoming Mr. Charles Collins.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. How are you for the
Just speak into the microphone. Yes.
choir?
Speak into it more. Yeah, lower it.
And now,
Yeah, a little bit better.
a little better.
Yeah.
We're recording, as I mentioned earlier, so I just want to get that set up. They'll edit that stuff out, I'm sure. My family's ancestors on my father's side, the Collins side, were the first to land in America in 1852. And they made Milford their home, and 3 more generations after that followed them. Many of them are buried here in St. Mary's and Vernon Grove cemeteries, and in nearby towns where some of the children settled and some of their descendants are here with us today. Milford, therefore, is, for all intents and purposes, my family's original hometown, and we thank you very much for welcoming us home today to share a few moments of our common heritage. What I've chosen to read for you today is the story within the story, one that I did not intend to write. My original goal was to leave an artifact for the present and future generations of my family to know something of the lives and times of our ancestors. Lives of cutting and shaping leather and stone in Milford's workshops and quarries. Lives who lived without fanfare, known only to those who worked with them and those who loved them, then forgotten by time. Until one day, they are remembered, and their names are spoken again by the living. This is the story of the remembering, a story of all of us. In the mid-1800s, Milford is the boot-making capital of America, employing thousands of cordwainers, that is, bootmakers, who produced 1 million pairs of boots and shoes annually. Milford is also the source of a world-famous pink granite, which adorns some of the most iconic buildings of that time. The Granite Rush, as they called it, attracts highly skilled stonecutters from around the world, including the master stonecutters of Italy, renowned for their craftsmanship. But our story today begins 150 years in the future. On an October day, much like today in 2001, my grandmother Jessie Ambrosini Collins was laid to rest here in Milford beside her husband, Joseph Cornelius Collins, in St. Mary's Cemetery. Weeks later, while settling her estate, her children and grandchildren discovered an old hope chest filled with artifacts from her 100 years of life. Among the curiosities and treasures was a tied bundle containing 3 handwritten journals previously unknown to the family. In time, they would come to realize that what they held in their hands was the family legacy. The remembering of life by those who came before and how it was with them in their time. Among the papers found in her desk was a fragment of her own remembering story, written in her own hand, dated April 2001, just 7 months before she died. It begins, James, my youngest, arranged a family celebration for my 100th birthday last month on March the 12th. The restaurant was lovely, and many family members who lived nearby and those who traveled came. It was a delight to see them all gathered together healthy and happy. Since then, I've been reflecting on the events of my life, wondering if it would be my last birthday. I remember my father's journal, which he kept since he left Italy, that my mother gave to me before she died. When my husband Joe passed away, among his things were his father Michael's journal and his grandfather Cornelius' journal, which Joe would occasionally read from to our sons to keep the remembering, as he called it. I've tied them together with my father's for safekeeping in my hope chest, Jesse Collins. From this fragment of Jesse's own remembering story, we now have a map of the journals tied in the bundle. But as yet, we have no idea which journal belongs to whom, or the stories that await inside. Opening one, written there at the top of the page, is the date, June 1st, 1899. Days after my father's funeral, my sister Ellen asked me to come to her house. She wanted me to see if there was anything I might want from our father's personal items. Among his things were his tools and a leather portfolio hand-stitched at the spine with intricate leather pieces. I asked Ellen what was in the papers. She said she didn't know because she hadn't read them, thinking they were just our father's workshop notes. Our father was not a man of many words, preferring to express himself through his craft. Weeks later, I saw Ellen and her husband Tom at their house for Sunday dinner. I brought the portfolio with me. I've been reading and organizing the pages, I told him. They're not his workshop notes. It's a journal, the story of his life and our mother's. We're all in it. Ellen broke down completely, sobbing into Tom's arms. It was too much for her to take so soon after our father's passing. The journal's contents were a window into a world we only knew fragments of, a world that shaped who we had become. Over the following months, I pieced together the order of the journal as best I could. Some of the writing was easy to identify by dates and significant events. Other pages contained random entries, thoughts, and pasted newspaper clippings of events that seemed to belong just where I found them. It took months, perhaps a year, to finish arranging the pages. The more I read, the deeper I felt the connection to my parents, understanding their struggles and triumphs in a way I never had before. Everyone agreed, since I was the youngest and would probably live the longest, I would keep the journal to preserve the family story of how we started in America. I will keep it close for all of us to remember how it was with them. Michael James Collins. We've now discovered the journal of Michael Collins and the story of how he came to learn of his father's journal after his death, and how he took on the task of organizing and in so doing, learned about the lives of his mother and father in a way that he never knew them before. So let's turn the page. It's 2 years later, July the 8th, 1901. Today, on the occasion of my 33rd birthday, I opened my father's journal years after his passing and read the words he wrote in the entry titled, "The Remembering." I have memories of the old life in Ireland, the odyssey of coming to America, and the new life in Milford town as a master court waiter. Some of those memories I will share to keep the remembering of how it was with us in our time. When I am gone, there will be few left who knew us. Then we will be forgotten. It is the common fate of common people. Cornelius Collins. Michael goes on to write, when I read those words again, I realized that my father's journal was meant to be more than just a historical artifact. It is the cornerstone of a living legacy, an enduring family heritage where each generation can add their stories to keep the remembering of how it was with us in our time. From an early age, Michael said, all of us knew our origins, one in Ireland and the other in America, but for the children in our second American-born generation, the thread between the two worlds is wearing thinner and in time might break completely, leaving only a vague memory that it ever existed at all. There are no rituals in America that I ever learned, like the remembering, the ancestral ritual my parents knew as children in Ireland, which they observed during Samhain, the autumn harvest. The ritual started with a circle of people and a cup of cider or wine. The cup was given to someone in the circle who would name their clan, then name themselves, and the direct ancestors back as many generations as they could recite. I am Clan Collins, Michael James, son of Cornelius, son of Peter. When you couldn't go back any further, you took a drink from the cup, then passed it on to the next person to continue. The more closely related the people in the circle were to you and your family as it is in the smaller villages of Ireland, the more easy you could learn the name of a great-great-grandfather you never knew. But next year, you would have to recite their name in the ritual. My parents said the children were particularly eager to outdo one another by showing off their memory skills to the delight of everyone. My mother said the most remarkable kids could recite both their father's and their mother's lineage. Each year, some would recite family stories, demonstrating their storytelling abilities, and adding new details that hadn't been included the year before, and often with a bit of Irish exaggeration. It was a different ritual than remembering the dead, my father said, which also happens at Halloween, when we pray for the continued well-being of family members, friends, and loved ones who have passed on to the ancient place. The remembering ritual is to know your origin and your place in the world of the living by remembering your ancestors and their origin in the branches of the family tree. My mother told me the ritual was practiced on Samhain in anticipation of new leaves. That was the new children that would sprout from the branches of the family tree in the coming year, and to remember the fallen leaves by their names. She also said, when an ancestor's name is spoken in the remembering, the ancestor is no longer forgotten, but alive and present in the loving memory of the living. Once I asked my father about people who didn't know their ancestors or their names, or where they came from. He said, when the hunger death came, little by little, the ritual celebrating life fell silent, like the people in their suffering. And some rituals, like the people, died altogether. Then the wind blows seeds and leaves from one field to another, and sometimes carries them great distance across oceans from their original rooting place. And when they take root in new soil and flourish, they become a new tree with new branches and new leaves. Then they can keep the remembering in the new tree where they are rooted. My grandchildren, the third American-born generation, will remember little, if anything, about my mother Johanna and my father Cornelius' lives, and perhaps not even his. Memories of me and others of the first American-born generation of our family. We will be American stories, told with an American Milford accent about the 4th of July, the first trains, planes, and automobiles in the world, when wireless radio was new, and how the Boston Americans baseball team won the very first World Series in 1903 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. There are ways and things, my parents used to say, that are worth remembering and repeating to the next generation, tying them with a thread to everyone and everything that has gone before them. A connecting thread in the chain of life, not a chain of burden, to be carried for tradition's sake or to make us suffer the sacrifices they endured. No one wants to sacrifice life or limb or their chance for happiness in this life, if they can find it. People sacrifice themselves however that may happen because there is no other way at the time, and pray their sacrifice has saved the next generation from the same fate. The thread that connects the generations, my parents said, is in the ways of seeing and things of magic and beauty passed down through the generations. They did not want to see that thread broken, leaving the children of the next generation separated from their heritage. My father used to say, it is the invisible umbilical cord running through all of us to our common origin. Michael James Collins. I'd like to read an entry titled Last Night's Dream that appears on the same page titled The Remembering that Michael read on the occasion of his 33rd birthday. And he discovered the deeper meaning of his father Cornelius' journal. Last Night's Dream, April 16, 1896. In my dream, I saw myself, the last that was born in Ireland, laid to rest beside my wife Johanna and our second son James in St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery. I recognized the Irish tower as I passed through the gates. 100 winters and summers passed, and the granite stones that marked our graves disappeared, leaving no plaque reminding future generations on this site once stood. Then I saw the ledger books open that contained all the bits and pieces of our lives, and I heard our names spoken in a story about our family that began this way. One October day in the autumn of 1855, at the old St. Mary's Church in Milford town, Cornelius Collins and Johanna Scanlon were married and made new lives and a new family and a new beginning in America. Suddenly, a woman's voice that sounded like Johanna's or my daughter Ellen spoke to me, waking me from my sleep. When I opened my eyes, there was no one there. It was so real. I heard them so clearly. I'm sure it wasn't a dream. Cornelius Collins. Beneath the entry was pasted a small yellow newspaper clipping that read, "The Framingham Star, April 17, 1896. Cornelius Collins died at the house of his daughter on Winthrop Street yesterday, age 63. He will be buried tomorrow in Milford. He leaves 3 sons and a daughter in this town." Our last entry is from the journal of Michael Collins titled The Remaining. 4 of us remain from the first American-born generation of Cornelius and Johanna Collins. Cornelius Joseph, William, Ellen, Maria, and me, Michael James. There are 19 grandchildren so far in the second American-born generation, with many more to follow, I'm sure. They will have a living memory of my father and stories to tell their children, his great-grandchildren, about his Irish accent and the words he taught them that they couldn't pronounce and how he'd laugh when they tried. So much of who we are comes from the imprints of places and the things that happen there, stamping themselves on our lives. The same can be said for people who imprint us with their causes and cares, and some we accept as our own. People and places may be much of who we are, but it is not all of who we are. There is our own remembering of ourselves. Michael closes his entry and our reading today with these words. Year after year, old leaves fall, lying buried beneath the snow. Hidden in spring by flowers and grasses, new leaves grow in their place. In time, all are forgotten until their names are remembered and spoken again by the living. Michael Collins. Thank you for listening. So I'd just like to say an afterword, and then I'll turn it back to our host today. This work or this gathering today would not have been possible without the contributions of our memory keepers, a community of individuals who record and safeguard the often unremarkable day-to-day transactions of our lives. They are the historians like Anna Montaigne, research librarians like Anne Berard, and community of faith leaders like Father Peter Joyce. But they are also our census workers, genealogists, archivists, town clerks, who, like many of us, go quietly about their work, documenting our births, our marriages and deaths, the taxes we pay, the properties we own, and the occupations we practice, together forming the layers of our life stories that, upon closer examination, reveal remarkable events and how it was with us in our time. What will we leave behind for future generations to remember us by our names? As Michael Collins wrote, I realized that my father's journal was meant to be more than just a historical artifact. It is the cornerstone of a living legacy, an enduring family heritage, where each generation can add their stories to keep the remembering of how it was in our time. This is our legacy to them. So this coming year, for those of you here today, and for those that you may speak to, and text and YouTube and whatever else it is you do, consider just one remembering story. Write about an event in your own life or someone dear to you. Record a family recipe and pass it along. Organize some photos or letters and put people's names on them. Start a project at school or at home to make your own family's remembering book, to add your names and stories for others to come. By the way, if you need examples, there's a book out on the table full of them. If you want some inspiration of what to write. Or what about beginning a new remembering tradition here in Milford? Perhaps by gathering again, maybe next year, to share something from your own remembering book with each other. You have so many memory keepers here among you that care deeply. Maybe other towns and their families will follow your example. Many of you have read the Remembering, and others of you will, and there are copies for sale here that are benefiting completely the work here of the commission. But unless you share a comment about something in that book that had meaning for you, or from this gathering today, you might as well keep it secret. No one will ever know. Make an impact. Leave a comment on the book page on Amazon in the review section and introduce the world to Milford Town and remembering. Finally, family and personal heritage, much of which we inherit from those who came before us, and the legacy we pass along to the next generation, are all part of our larger life curriculum, the things that we learn and practice throughout our lifetime. These things of heritage and legacy and how they impact us in ways we don't always see are explored in detail in the latest book, Life Curriculum. What you learn and practice makes you who you are. Amber Art at the library will have some copies coming, not too distant future, and you will see them right along the book page, the comments page on Amazon. So don't forget to leave a comment. And myself and my family thank you for making this a special day for all of us. Thank you. My next generation. This is my dear granddaughter, Mars Navarro. He looks like about.
Several of you purchased remembering copies for yourself or family members. Charles will be available to sign, and there's additional copies to purchase. We also welcome you to enjoy a little refreshment up here among yourselves. The museum is open as well. If you never visited, it's quite something. I heard the little one might really enjoy seeing some of the cases and the military uniforms. It just really makes history come alive. One of the things about the remembering that was so poignant for me, making a new life, where you've never, you know no one really, and you don't know what you're looking for. That was done so beautifully. You just, getting a job and like being, going through the ranks of the factory and learning to make the shoes and dancing and so on. But compared to the journey over on the ship, that was so vivid, and really stayed with me. Many other things too. I was delighted by sort of the courtship of the young people too, and how church was such an important part of their sort of sense of belonging and continuity to the home country as well as here and building the roots.
How would you like to handle the comments or questions or anything, or do you want to just go eat?
I think, before we disperse as a group, I think we should, let people speak a little bit. Yeah. I did want to try and sort of pleasure to also do a plug for another family memoir that has been published. We have Paula Bergman and her sister, Karen, with us, and they have recently published their father's memoir. I'll let Paula say it.
Sure. No, thank you for the introduction. I'm Paula from Milford. My sister Karen from Village. We grew up on Walnut Street in Milford. My dad, John Maloney, about 20 years ago, when he was 72, wrote a memoir of his service in World War II. And we had copies of it as a Word document on our laptops, and we shared it just among the family. But he could always kind of envision getting it published as like a little 6x9 book. And he passed away in 2013. I was busy raising a family, we're working, but now we're retired, and we thought it's time to actually get his book published. And it's really a tale of he and his best friend. Many people here met Willie Gentili, a longtime Milford resident. The two of them were 18-year-olds who got but they were replacement soldiers in the Army. They didn't go over to Europe as a cohesive unit, but they were randomly placed together in the same battalion, the same company, in the same platoon, and they ended up in the same rifle squad and served together. Lou was a VAR man, but he operated the automatic rifle. My dad was the assistant VAR man, he carried the bandolier and bullets for the gun. But they were there through February, they were at the end of the war, but they saw some of the final battles of the war against the Germans. And when the war ended in May, they ended up serving every year with the occupation troops. But they were lifelong friends. They lived for a while together in the old Sons of Italy hall. My dad and his family were on the second floor, and Lou's family was on the third floor. And just the fact that the two of them ended up sharing the same foxhole together in the war was just a great buddy story. And they remained friends. They both came home and stayed in Milford for the rest of their lives. They reconnected after Lou's wife died and my mother died. Then, they saw each other socially throughout that time. But they would meet up once a month for lunch. And then after my father passed, Lou came over and helped us as we were trying to settle the estate, took my husband and I out to lunch. The two of them now are buried at Sacred Heart Cemetery. And it was just like, I thought as I read that, the buddy aspect of the story never jumped out at me earlier when I first started reading it. But we were very proud to get it published. We have a lot of war military photos in here that he wanted to get in the book. He was in the 100th Army Division, and one of the finest after he wrote this, the most memorable part of his life was being at the dedication in Washington, D.C. of the World War II Memorial in 2004. And I live in the D.C. area, so we went there with him. And then every time he came back to visit us until the year before he died, that was the one place he wanted to go. But he's also son of an Italian immigrant. My grandfather came here from Consano, Italy. And my dad, when he was a teenager, worked at the Milford Shoe Company, summer jobs. And the granite quarries at that time are no longer operational, they had closed. But they were filled with spring water, so that's where my dad spent his time in the summer. They was the local swimming holes for teenagers in town. So there's a long, this is also an immigrant story too. But I want to thank you. I just got a copy of your book. It's a wonderful remembrance, and I would love to actually know how you do a lot of your research. You said you spent it out. I assume you didn't grow up in Milford, but your family was all here, and that would be interesting to know more, what that entailed. But I'm hoping to be back here in the spring. I've talked to Ann. 2 copies of this are on circulation in the library, and I believe some copies are here downstairs in the museum. So we're looking forward to coming back and really doing a book talk, and presenting more about my dad's story. But thank you. I just think, like you said, remembering our family's history, honoring my dad's service, and this is a perfect spot for that, because it's really dedicated to all the people in this community who have served in various ways in the military and the force. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think there's an epidemic of authors going on here, and we're all about similar and same things, but it's a remembering.
Yes.
What you just presented
Yes.
to us, and I think that was the hope that today those who would come out would have their own remembrance, and we all do. And we all have, but stepping forward and finding a way to hear the next generation remain
Yes.
something that they can touch is so much better than going to the family tree on Ancestry and just seeing a name and date.
Yeah.
But it took years. It took quite a few years reading Milford Town meeting minutes, which was,
Well,
you remember the libraries, the old microfilms that you
Oh,
So, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And so that's the kind of effort that it took. And, you know, like for a lot of us, you don't have the stories. You've got some facts, you've got some bits and pieces. So from piecing together, from the work that people that I had mentioned earlier do for us, the quiet people, our record keepers, our memory keepers, I was able to create a chronological framework of their whereabouts. But then I had to imagine the world that they lived in. And that's what took about 3 years, I guess.
I have luckily two members of the family who are genealogists. My sister May Richards is sitting here, and my sister Rita, who has passed away. They have gone way back. I know our ancestors were from Alfred, Ireland, and when they came over. Our great-great-grandmother came with 5 children. Her husband had been killed by a kick of a horse in the head, and she had to move, and it was 1849. So, but they bought a passenger ship, the Argyle. We have the passenger list from Boston, so you can get the manifest. So we know exactly where they were, and they have followed them right through. But I wanted to tell you how wonderful Father Peter thinks you are.
It's always good to have a priest on there.
He said that I don't know where he got his information. He never went to the library to ask you. He never came to the historical commission to ask us questions. And he never asked him anything about St. Mary's. How did you get all that information?
Well, just one correction on that. Anne did help me find, like, the Framingham Star obituary piece that I read, that small little snippet, Anne found for me. So yeah. But
But it's incredible that you have not knowledge.
well, it was all, like I said, it was really just, you know, page turner documents. The gypsy moths are in the trees again this year.
I also want to say that the museum is open downstairs when anybody wants to go through. The building was built as a Civil War memorial, so there's a lot of Civil War artifacts that were in the attic of the building when we moved in here, so we bought display cases. So they're not just generic Civil War items, they look everything else in there. And then we've gone on to have current things too, right?
And there are some really endearing shoes and boots in the display cases as well.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have a question or a comment before we throw everybody out into the meeting room?
I just want to give a shout out to librarians here and everywhere, because the librarians here helped me fact check some information in my father's memoir when we were in the process of editing. And we relied on other libraries, military libraries for systems and, you know, documentation. So, you know, you are the keepers of our history and our memories. Thank you.
I believe Father Peter is officiating a wedding.
No. It's just that he wrote me this kind of parting shot. He wrote me this lovely letter, several pages long. And he left it on Facebook, which I go to once every 6.5 years. So I didn't know it was there. I suddenly found, I don't know how I did it, and the one big thing that I remember about in the letter was, it said, I loved the carriage ride home between the children after the funeral of Cornelius, because the night before, the officiating priest had an Irish wake. Kept on the Virgin Mother, and the daughter questioned, I wonder if the Virgin Mary had as heavy a hangover on her head as Father Cuddy did last night. He said that cracked him up, so that's what I remember.